welcome to the fandom and food track here at ConTinual. This is the holiday track, and we're talking about all kinds of things merry and bright. And tonight we are talking about preparing the feast. Now, some of that's fictional, some of it's real. We'll let you decide which is which. But first, let's have our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, starting with Stacey.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Stacey Agdern. I am a romance author. My most recent book came out October 12th called Love and Latkes. It is about a small town, Latka Fryoff. Our heroine is a web designer who has an interest in all things kosher food and wants to become a host herself. She is, of course, on a collision course with the unrequited crush from her high school days, who is a tax accountant, but who wants to open a kosher deli in the place where the old one had closed 4 years before. He is joining the Latka competition to get the prize money to do this. It is a story about love, and it's a story about latkes, and it's also a story about our hometowns and what happens when we leave and what happens when we stay. I am looking forward to chatting tonight. Thank you so much for having me.
Very cool. Chantal?
Hi, I'm Chantal Mer, and I actually am in the finishing up writing a book that revolves around Christmas, which will be out next year. But I just signed up because I like to talk about food. And that's really it. I like to talk about food. So I was like, oh, yay.
Jean Marie?
Hi, I'm Jean Marie Ward. I write fiction, nonfiction, and everything in between. Seriously, I'll write anything they pay me for. I've written in romance, I've done mystery, but mostly you'll see my byline on science fiction and fantasy. I also do interviews for my sins. But I think the real reason that Gail has me here today is because I have a lot of food disaster stories. And yeah, I survived them. If I survived my mother's cooking, you guys can survive anything.
You do have some great stories, which I hope we'll hear some of. Susan?
All right. I am Susan Roddey. I write dark fantasy and horror as S.H. Roddey and romance as Siobhan Kincaid. I am also a cover designer and editor for Falstaff Books in Charlotte. And I'm here because I do a lot of cooking. I do a lot of messing up. I do a lot of burning things. And I am usually feeding an army when I'm cooking. So holidays are always fun.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good to me. I'm Gail Martin and Morgan Bryce. As Gail, I write epic fantasy, urban fantasy, and more. As Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance. And my most recent book, Trash and Treasure, Morgan Bryce book, features a baker who is also a possum shifter who makes seductive donuts. So there, donuts that are the key to winning his beloved's heart, who happens to be a raccoon shifter, because it's Foxhole. But let's start with food in your fiction, if any, and then we'll go to real life soon enough. Chantal, any food in your fiction? Do they get to eat, or do they?
They're always
visit
eating.
with other things?
They're always eating. Yeah, I mean, and it's funny. Like, I didn't realize how much I like to write about food until I started writing about food. It was I have Absolving Ash, which is a male hockey romance. And Ash is a chef. He's a former hockey player turned chef. So there's a lot of food in there. And I think like a lot of my characters use food. It's like a comfort. It's their way of showing love. And so, so there's always food in my books.
Jean Marie, how about you?
Well, oddly enough, since I am a foodie, and you know this for real, food does not make a lot of appearances in my work because I think I'm saving it for a seduction scene that will go like the one between Antonio Banderas and Salma Hayek in Desperado, which I still think is about the sexiest scene ever. But the place where food does appear is in a series of 3 stories about a dragon named Lord Bai. And the first one really is all about roast pig and what roast pig smells like. And the story's out there. I think Broad Universe still has it in print for free. So I'll let you find out that part. But yeah, he's obsessed with food, always following his nose to find food. But the most recent thing, though, wasn't food at all. It was about Dionysus, and there wasn't actually a bottle of wine in the whole story. I felt cheated.
Now, you've also got Cooking Up a Storm, and you've also got Strudel.
Yes, but they're not actually eating. And Cooking Up a Storm actually has no food in it.
No food. I'm wounded to the heart.
What she's cooking is a storm. And that's not done with foodstuffs, unless you count a rooster that is blooded or is basically drained of blood in the middle of the ceremony. But no food, no cooking is actually involved.
Darn. Susan, how about you?
My characters are always eating. They're for some, and especially in romance, for some reason, I guess food is my love language. I don't know. They're always eating. They're always, whether it's some kind of snack or they're always desserts, they're always making coffee or drinking tea or looking for a fun new restaurant. I probably use food as a plot device a little too much for my own good, but I like food, and I don't know, it, like Chantal said, it's comfort. There's something that just makes you feel good about a good meal, and that's something that you can easily translate to a character on a page, and when you say it, everybody kind of knows what that means. So I guess that's maybe why I lean toward it.
Okay. I know I got a lot more detailed about my food because my editor is a foodie. And if I just said they went out to dinner, I would get all these notes in the margins. Where did they go? What did they eat? You know, what was the side dish? What did they have to drink? Did they get dessert? And I finally just started putting it in the first place so that she didn't have to write me editorial notes asking for it. And so I considered a job well done if she goes, yum, this sounds really good. Yes. So that's how I learned to be a lot more detailed with it. And that's fun. I agree. It brings a lot of realism to the page, and you can get some insights into somebody by what they eat. Stacey?
It's kind of interesting because I was thinking about, like, I do have a lot of food in my books, but I think one of the really awful habit that I have is I write things that I am craving, and I end up craving them for years later. I mean, I'm the one who wrote about a poutineery in my first hockey romance, and a short story in an anthology called Going All In, Playing Her Game. There was a poutineery there, and it showed up again in the second book in the series, and I crave, of course there's no poutine anywhere near me these days. My first Hanukkah short, Home for Hanukkah, in the anthology called Burning Bright, I wrote about mofongo. I craved mofongo for a year after writing that short story. I thankfully learned my lesson, sort of, and in the Friendships and Festivals series, the food that I write about, I can actually get, or at least is easier to get. But I still, I'll write something and my characters will have an exchange over ice cream, and I'll be like, great, for the next 3 months I'm craving ice cream. Or like I'm sitting in the middle of July writing about latkes and a latke competition. Everybody's making latkes 7 ways till Sunday using different vegetables and different sauces and different aspects of things. And I'll be like, I would like some latkes, please, now. And of course, again, it's July, so it's not happening.
Yeah. One thing that strikes me listening to everybody is how much food is associated with love and relationship. And that may be why in most of my stories to date. It's just not there because the stories have not been about relationships. And I think that's a big part of it, because despite my mother's inability to cook, food still means love.
Yeah.
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 It's
Well, I
a
think
bonding experience.
it is. And Susan, like when you said it's your love language, I was like, oh yeah, like sarcasm and food. Those are
Yes.
that's my love language right
Yes, yes.
there. Yeah.
But I agree, because it's not about necessarily eating the food all by yourself. It's about eating the food in community. Whether it reminds you of a community you used to be part of, or whether it's with a group of friends, the food always tastes better when you're with people. And I had a trainer once who had her own somewhat unhealthy attitudes toward food. And she was trying to tell me that food is just fuel. It doesn't mean anything more than that. Just eat what you need to keep your body alive. And you don't need to, it doesn't need to be any more than that. And I just looked at her and said, there is a reason why Jesus had the Last Supper instead of the last aerobics class. It's food matters.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to share a meaningful meal with your friends, you're going to do it over a meal. You're not going to do it in a spin class. So have you ever researched a food for a book, or because you read a book or saw a movie and discovered something new, or gone looking for it to help with a characterization? Jean Marie?
Actually, not so much, because I'm just going to go researching food anyway. It's just like, oh my God, I've got 1,001 Christmas cookies to make. I need a different cookie. I need a different cookie. No, I did not research strudel for that particular passage, because I grew up a significant portion of my life in Germany. Therefore, strudel was there. Excuse me, I know how it's made. So not for food. The closest was that story featuring Dionysus, which is in The Modern Deity's Guide to Surviving Humanity from Zombies Need Brains. And it was researching wine and wine making and viniculture rather than the food. And then, of course, none of it was used because the story just didn't go in that direction. The story was about actually wine-based hand sanitizer. Yeah, I know, I'm sorry. But that was as close as I got.
Okay. How about you, Susan?
Actually, I don't know if it counts, but I've got a novella that I'm actually finishing up. It's part of a series, and it wasn't necessarily the food so much as it started out looking for information. The characters end up in a very small town in Romania, and I started out by going to Google Maps and just kind of looking around and looking for different things to do, and places that might be there to kind of give me an idea of what I'm looking at. And I found there's this little cafe type place in the middle of this tiny little town. So I go over and I start looking at the menu, and I start seeing all of these things that make absolutely no sense to me. And I ended up wandering down this rabbit hole. And 6 hours later, I was no closer to getting to where I needed to be in the story. But I discovered all kinds of really interesting breakfast traditions in Romania.
Mm-hmm. Goulash included.
It is very interesting to see what people eat in other parts of the world for different meals.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, they ended up at this little cafe place for breakfast the next morning. And I spent way too much time talking about the food that they were having and realized I'm going to have to go back and cut most of this out because it doesn't make a bit of difference. But it does. It fascinated me. And I do. It was shiny, and I followed it all the way to the end and lost half a day.
That is such a writer thing to do. Yeah, I'm in a collection called Ringing the New at Kingdom Castle, and it's 4 or 5 authors in a fictional who have all written about a fictional castle in a fictional town over in England. And there's a big party at the end of the book, And so we were all coordinating what we were writing about as the food so that we all were describing basically the same event. And one of our group lives in England. And so I had been the first one to write up the menu. And I sent it over and she said, okay, but they wouldn't have this. And no, you can't get that. And that's too American, but they might have this. So we had to rework it. And I learned about English buffets. And the other influence is we've been watching a lot of K-dramas. And now I have learned a whole lot about Korean food. And I make a list when they eat it because they're always eating in K-dramas, always. And something good happens, they eat. Something bad happens, they eat. And so I make a list of what they eat. And then I go to the restaurants and go, do you have this? And can I try this? And so it has, do you have hangover soup? I have not yet found hangover soup, but I have found a bunch of the other things. So yes, it's wonderful to broaden your culinary horizons with literature. How about you?
So I have a bunch of close-knit characters in Love and Latkes. And two of them, my main male character has a best friend. They've known each other since they were in 5th grade. You know, they've known each other for a long time. Like his, the best friend's mother watched the main male character when his dad went to work, after school. Like they spent all this time together. And I knew that at some point the best friend was going to give Leo, his name is, the main male character was going to give Abe a bunch of trouble at some point in the book. I also needed something that was going to be tricky, that was going to confuse the people in the middle of the cooking competition. What I didn't realize is that the two needs were going to dovetail when I discovered the Italian ricotta latke. It was fantastic. It is like not impossible to make, but it's like really tricky. Like you've got to be really, really careful because you can cook the outside, but the inside is still gonna be liquefied like on your plate, and that's going to be a problem. But also the ricotta latke comes with this whole extended meal. And as I searched through these Italian Hanukkah traditions, I got all excited. So I gave the special fried chicken, the fratelli de Hanukkah, and a couple of other things to Leo to have him cook an Italian Hanukkah meal for his best friend and, his new girlfriend and a couple of other people. And also gave the contestants of my latke fry-off the difficult task of making a ricotta latke.
Sounds good. Now I'm hungry for latkes.
I was just going to say that. Talk about craving food.
Yeah.
Having grown up with the ricotta cheese,
yeah,
I know immediately how tricky that could be.
Yeah. It's like...
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Go ahead, Chantal.
No, so I just will research. I have fun researching what my characters are going to eat or where they're going to go. And I will spend, an inordinate amount of time doing that because I'm like, oh, that looks good. Oh, that looks great. Oh, that's fabulous. So I enjoy that. And Susan Scott Shelley is another author, and she and I write together. And we've been critique partners for years and years and years, but we do, and we haven't done one recently, but we would do pairings. We do it on our YouTube channel. And what we do is we pair food and drink with a book that we're reading. So we'll take an author's, book, and then we have that author come on, and we we'll surprise each other with what we've made. And because that's, again, when I'm reading a book, even if there's not food in it, I'm thinking about, I think about oh, I could really go for, a cup of hot chocolate, or a glass of Pinot would be great with this book. And so that's how I'm always thinking. And that's what we do.
That sounds wonderful. Now, how about real life food traditions? Did you grow up with, or did you acquire any food related traditions that are maybe a little different or unusual or localized? Susan?
Well, I come from a huge family. Each of my parents were one of 12. So holidays were always big, really big. They still are, because I mean, even though, you know, my mother's up in age, there are something like 200 of us between the grandkids and the great grands and going on and on. And we still, you know, we still try to get together. We still have the big meals. So I'm used to cooking for an army. I also grew up outside of Charleston, South Carolina. I grew up on the Barrier Islands, so I was around a lot of, you know, the older country backwoods families, because my father was born in Cottageville, which is in the middle of nowhere between Charleston and Walterboro. It, until about 5 years ago, it had a stoplight and a diner, and that was it, and you missed it. A lot of his family's recipes, we still have a lot of the recipes that came from my mother's family. I'm now the one cooking everything. I'm the one feeding everybody. You know, even now we're talking about getting our family together next year. And the first thing is, okay, we need mac and cheese. You've got to make the mac and cheese. That has to be there. Before they even decide if they're going to do it or not, they're talking about that. You know, we are up until the last 2 years, you know, when the world wasn't on fire, we would always have a big Christmas party, and we would spend days cooking and baking and just making all of the things we know everybody enjoys, you know, meatballs, little finger foods, veggie trays, Christmas cookies, candy, all kinds of things. And I've got a notebook somewhere around my house. It's like a 3-inch binder just full of things that I've managed to write down over the years. And I can't even remember them all at this point.
Yeah, I think one of the things that stands out with actually both my birth family and my married into family is Chex Mix. I had an aunt who, whenever she would have people over whenever she'd have all her, you know, her brother and sister and all of us over for dinner, I remember she had Chex Mix and ginger ale, and that was rare and esoteric for me because we didn't have those at home. And so that was a real treat. And then when I married my husband, his mother routinely made Chex Mix, and that became something that our kids identified as going with every holiday and every excuse you could possibly have. Well, fast forward, Larry amended the recipe in our box to be automatically a triple batch. Now, it's not the recipe you'll find on the back of the Chex box. This is the old recipe before that. So I think it's better. It's probably less healthy, but boy, is it good. But yeah, we do a triple batch in this huge bowl. And then what the kids don't eat while they're home, and my kids are all adults, and they're all taking goodie bags of large Ziploc goodie bags of Chex Mix. Mom, are you going to make Chex Mix? Yep. So that's kind of our big thing. And I actually wrote it into a short story about blending traditions and how important the food is when a couple gets together. And so that's the Christmas Crunch. Stacey?
So I think I have very, very, very close friends who live in Southern Virginia. I am also one of those people who should not be allowed near a kitchen as a cook. The joke is that my brother inherited the cooking genes in my family. And so, you know, at family gatherings, it's my brother who's in front of the stove and cooking, you know, with my mom. You know, it's, you know, not me. I am setting the table. I might be like putting salad on the table, but that's about the extent of it. As I said, I unfortunately have the gift of burning water. I am that horrible a cook. However, my mother has the brisket recipe to end all brisket recipes. Mm-hmm. It's a traditional Jewish brisket. It's how do I describe it? Like it's got that sort of a tomatoey sauce, but it's like soft. It's like pulled. It's fall off the, it's fall off the roast, like really, really, really good. And my brother has, and my mother gets the phone call, from my brother. Hey, listen, how much do I add to this? And my mother will tell him, and it's hilarious because you're listening to my brother on the phone, like family gatherings. And so anyway, I have my very close friend in Virginia, for her bridal shower, I sat my mom down and I said, okay, I would like your brisket recipe. And she gave it to me. And so I gave it to my best friend as a wedding present, as like an engagement, as part of a wedding shower gift. And it was like the most amazing thing. And so she'll make it, like I'll come down and she'll be like, guess what I'm making? And I'm like, brisket. And she's like, yes. And it's amazing. And then she'll tell me, like, guess what I made yesterday? Family tradition passed down to close friends in the best of ways. Unfortunately, brisket has not made its way into any of my books as of yet, but barbecue, kosher barbecue has. But that's another story I'm talking about.
Sounds good. Chantal?
So I like, my stepfather's Filipino, so we were part of we lived in a small town, but we're part of a Filipino community. So we would do, and he was a great cook. My mom, not so much. And so he, like, who was it who was saying about the pig roast? Was that you, Jean Marie? Were you the? Yeah. So we used to do in the summer, like a pig in the pit. Like, it was a big deal. And he made great pancit, and his fried rice was better than anyone else's. So those were things that I learned. I mean, not the pig roast, I can't do that. But that I always loved, along with my grandfather was a baker, and Norwegian. So he would make, fadiman and lepsa and like all this, all that stuff. And then, so I had all that, like, growing up, and I was also lived in Southern California when I was young. So Mexican, like, there was a huge Mexican influence, and I've lived all over the country. And now, so I feel like all of that has, like, infiltrated our household. My daughter is from Korea, so we do Korean food, and it's just, and the street we live on, we have such a variety of people, and like our block parties are like killer. Like, we've got, Korean food, we've got Indian food, we have Chinese food, we have, we have everything. And so I feel like all of that plays into everything that we do. Like Christmas Eve, our tradition is we do sushi. Like, we make our sushi. Like, we make it. The kids make it. And then we have my husband, who is from small area in Pennsylvania, but the Pennsylvania Dutch was very a big influence. So we'll have filling, which I never had filling until I was like, what is, like, that was the first time I had filling. I was like, oh my God, this is fantastic. And his dad, I'm like, what's in here? And his dad said, like, a pound of butter. And I was like, well, hello, no wonder it's so good. A pound of butter in here. So we just have, like, all of these influences from, everything that just play a huge part. But yeah, like, for us, Christmas Eve, our tradition is that we make sushi. Like, that's our thing.
Pretty cool.
It works.
Jean Marie?
Well, tradition in our family was always rather sideways. My mother was first, and her 9 siblings. Okay, I do not have you beat, Susan, but we did. My mother was one of 10. We're of that generation of Italians who are trying desperately hard to be, quote, American, like my dad's side of the family, who were Irish and who ate like wasps from New England. Everything is butter, salt, and I can't digest any of it. Because despite this, I have an Italian stomach. But here we got all these Italian folks trying really hard to have quote, American holidays. It all would break down really fast because I don't care what your particular ancestry is, whatever you make when it comes to cookies will be in the tradition of your family's cookie making. My husband's Slovak. His mother, upon our wedding, gave me a Slovak cookbook. I made cookies out of the Slovak cookbook. They all tasted Italian. And so, you know, there's this incredible tension about, oh, you're supposed to have turkey on the big day, but the day before is a holy day of obligation, so therefore you cannot have meat. But being Italians, we don't believe in depriving ourselves, so it's 7 fishes. And oh, Aunt Mary, if she's home, will fry sardines, so they are divine. But if she's going out, she's going to bring what all of the girls in my mother's family, for some insane reason, considered the ne plus ultra of their childhood, bacala, which is reconstituted cod. Let me tell you, this stuff is so vile that my father, who put up with my mother's cooking for 55 years, I don't know why it didn't kill him sooner. He would not let my Aunt Mary in the house with the bacala because it stank the whole house when she just stepped in the door from the garage. So you had that sort of thing going on. But yeah, the main traditions were the fact that everybody is having a party. And it's sort of like a continuous party during the holidays as you go from one house to the other with all of the cooks in the family. And they're not always female, trying to outdo themselves with some sort of specialty. But, you know, on Christmas Eve, there was all of these fishes. And if it was at our house, every fish in the place was bought. Let me tell you, it was the only way people could survive. But, and then on Christmas Day, even though in other holidays like Easter, we always had lamb, because that's what you had in Italy. You had lamb, you had lots of egg dishes. On Christmas, on the other hand, all of these Italian ladies would try to cook a turkey. And it was a disaster. Not as big a disaster as when my mother cooked a turkey, but let me tell you, the cooking was so bad that my father, who's Army for about 28 years, used to eat at the mess hall and pretended it was for the sake of the troops. That was our tradition, the mess hall. Dried sliced turkey breast. It was better than we got at home.
So that is the perfect lead in to holiday disasters when it comes to cooking. Does anybody have any dirty laundry they want to air about holiday disasters? Yeah, well, let's start with Jean Marie because she's got a great story here.
Yeah, the turkey. Okay. I may have implied it, but I haven't said it out straight out. My mother was the worst cook east of the Mississippi, and she had very, very few competitors west thereof. When Hormel decided, for some unknown reason, to inject chili into their hot dogs, people asked her if she had been hired as a consultant. Needless to say, those Hormel chili dogs vanished in a great hurry. She also, you know, when being a military wife, she had to give a lot of parties. Well, the parties were generally done by potluck, not because they were supposed to be, but because she thought all of her neighbors really loved her a lot and wanted to help out in the party. No, they just wanted to make sure that nobody died, because her dishes, there was this thing she did that was supposed to be a crab dish that came out wet in the center and burnt on the edges, and she would put parsley around it. And what would happen would be the commanding officer of the post or and the vice commanding officer of the post would come in together. The wives would split off. The commander's wife would take my mother aside. The vice commander would get me by the ear, drag me over to the table and say, "What did your mother make? Don't lie. What?" And so I would say she made this crab dip. And this woman, who was generally a colonel's wife, would basically take a spoon, mash up the center, and push all of the crab dip under the parsley. And then she would spend the rest of the party circulating among people to say, "Do not eat from the dish that has the parsley around it. Just don't." And they didn't, and nobody died. Well, my husband is a very good cook, and he very quickly glommed onto the fact that we did not want to eat anything at my mother's on Christmas Day. So one year when Martha Stewart decided that fresh killed turkeys were the bomb, mother decided to go down to a specialty butcher in Chestnut Hill. They lived outside of Philadelphia, to get a fresh killed turkey. They were very expensive. We're talking $30 or $40 in 1989. All right. That's a heck of a lot to pay for a bird. But she brought it home and basically started bragging about it. Well, I mugged my father and said, "You will not let mother eat and cook that turkey. You know, we will not waste $40 a turkey on mother's cooking. And Dad, you know, mother can't cook very well." And he said, "Jean Marie, why do you think that we spent half of our budget when I was a major eating out? We ate out more than most generals." Okay, so turkey is saved. My husband cooks the turkey. It is a fabulous success. Everybody loves it. Okay, fast forward the next year. Well, my mother decided that she was going to show the world. So she got another fresh killed turkey and froze it. Then, about 3 weeks before Christmas, she decided to defrost it in the breezeway, which was the area between the garage and the house. It's open, screened. So yes, it's December in the early 1990s when, yes, it was colder in Philadelphia than it is now, but it's still, the temperatures varied between 60 and 30. So you've got this turkey that is getting hot and getting cold and getting hot and getting cold and getting hot and getting cold. But we didn't know about this when we came home. And so my husband and I prepped to do the turkey. But we arrived very, very late for some reason. I think there's something going on at the job. And so we said to mother, "Please wake us up at 9 o'clock so we can cook everything in time for everybody who's coming." Mother's sisters, her sisters and their family, Greg's parents, Greg's brother, who was between wives at that point. Everybody's coming to mother's house for this turkey feast to be cooked by my husband, the really good cook. Okay, well, we're in a room where it's got, it's facing north. So the room doesn't get a hell of a lot of light until about mid to late morning. And I suddenly looked up and I realized it was late. So I got up, threw on some clothes, went out and said, "Oh my God, it's 11 o'clock. I grab Greg, shake Greg. We stagger into the kitchen. And where's the turkey? Mother has the convection oven upstairs. She has something downstairs that shall not be named because it makes awful food, but she called it a roaster. But the stove is full of stuff. It's not on, but it's full of stuff. A turnip dish that I don't know what it looks like. It doesn't look like turnips. It doesn't look like potatoes. Whatever it is, it's scary. Some kind of bean casserole that I can't eat, but maybe somebody else can. I don't know why she made it, because she can't eat it anyway. She's lactose intolerant too, Southern Italian. Rolls and that sort of stuff. All you have to do is the salad. What about the turkey? Oh, it's cooking. Where is it cooking? It's not in the oven. It's in the roaster, the thing which shall not be named, in the basement. The roaster is sort of a big pot with a lid on top of a shelving unit. And it has a dial that has temperatures on it going from 250 to 500. But I tried cooking in that thing, and everything I cooked came out looking like mother's crab dip. So I gave up on it. And I'm going, wait a minute. You put the turkey in this pot? Yes, I put it in a plastic bag and soaked it in vermouth and tied it up tight and put it in the roaster. And it's been cooking now for 2 hours. Greg and I exchanged horrified looks. At which point mother says, I'll show you. So she runs down. Greg and I are still giving each other the side eye. She runs down, and then suddenly we hear this wail coming up the stairs from the basement. Mother and pounding feet. My father, who had been in his den doing some kind of work, comes out to look. In she runs into the kitchen. This little 5-foot nothing, 100-pound nothing comes in carrying this big pot, slams it on the table, and goes, I think there's something wrong. I think there's something wrong. And she had put one of those tinfoil plates with a bag with the turkey in it. It doesn't feel right. And so I chased her away, ripped open the bag. The turkey is pale beige and it's wobbling. And then as it wobbles, and then it goes, it collapses. It literally imploded in on itself. And I'm going, what the hell? And my husband, who smoked at that time, stuck a cigarette in his mouth and goes downstairs. And and mother's, of course, shrieking and flailing. My father takes one look at the thing and says, oh, hi, Gene. Great, Gene. I'm going to Wawa for a couple of hot dogs. You want anything? Out the door he goes, because he's a coward. He knows better than to stick around when one of these things happens. And I'm looking at this. What do I do? What do I do? I try to get it out of the thing. It's slopping. It's literally slopping. But we slide it onto a platter, and I'm going, oh God, Mom, this has got to go outside. This has got to go outside. This is not edible. You have a ham. We have vegetables. We have other things. I can cook some stuff, but we cannot put this on the table. Oh, it'll be fine. Just put parsley around the edges. And at which point my husband emerges from the basement and he starts going, it's a dishwasher, that's a dishwasher. And my mother looks at him and goes, oh, you just don't understand. She storms out. And I said, what are you talking about, the dishwasher? And he said, your mother was a nurse, right? Yeah. That's why she washes steaks with soap and water. Yes, she's sort of, yeah. You know what that so-called roaster was in a past life? What does that have to do with this? It has to do everything. It was an autoclave. Yeah, it had these funny little holes in the racks for test tubes. Basically, she steamed the turkey. But I looked at it and said, I couldn't feed anybody this. So, we put it there. We had the parsley all around it. We were pretty sure that nobody in her family, knowing that she cooked it, would take a bite. They had ham. So we weren't that worried, though. I mentioned we have ham, don't eat the turkey. We have ham, don't eat the turkey. We get to his parents. We have ham, don't eat the turkey. Oh, you're just saying that. Your mother's a wonderful cook, from his mother. And we'll show you is in her eyes. And she and Greg's brother and her husband sat down, and all the Italians at the table, and my father and Greg and me are eating ham, including my mother. All of the Slovaks at the table, except Greg, they're eating the turkey. They're getting greener and greener and greener, and they do make it out the door. They didn't make it home to New Jersey. They spent Christmas Day in the Christmas evening in the emergency room, because Mother had defrosted the turkey in the breezeway And so it was just a breeding ground of foul viruses. And I'm sure it probably contributed to them dying when they were only 80 as opposed to 90, like my parents, even after eating mother's cooking for all those years. But yes, that is the tale of the imploding turkey. And this is the only reason Gail actually asked me on this panel, so she can hear the tale of the imploding turkey.
It's not the only reason. I love your food stories, but it is a good story. Now, I know that one's hard to follow, but does anybody else have a food disaster?
I got nothing.
Yeah, that's hard to follow up. And I'm glad for everybody's sake that you don't have more food disasters. The one of those is enough, I think. Yeah. But now
we aren't even talking about the Nagasaki ribs.
We'll hold that one for another panel. Well, folks, we have blown through our time. And for the most part, everything has been wonderful that we've talked about, except that turkey. I think I'm going to hold off on that. So let's go around again and let everybody know what your new, recent, or upcoming book is and where they can find you online. Starting with you, Stacey.
So my most recent book is Love and Latkes. It came out on October 12th. You can find it pretty much wherever books are sold. I can be found on Twitter as NYStacey, on Instagram as S Agdern. My website is staceyagdern.com and Facebook as Stacey A. Agdern. And if you sign up for my newsletter through the MailChimp link, you will get a short story called Good Friends and Good Books, which takes place in between Miracles and Menorahs and History of Us. And in the next couple of weeks, that's going to switch over to a short story called What Happens at Comic-Con, which takes place in between History of Us and the Moon.
Nice. Chantal?
Susan Scott Shelley and I are releasing a book in January called Spark. It's the first in our Love and Rugby series, and it's about a recreational rugby league. So that comes out January 11th. And you can find Susan and I at shelleyandmer.com, and you can find me at chantalmer.com. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram. I'm on Twitter, but I don't do a lot on Twitter because Twitter moves too fast for me. I'm just not. I'm a slower paced person.
Okay.
So yeah, that's what we have going on.
Cool. Jean Marie?
My most recent release is Fire Sale in the Modern Deities Guide to Surviving Humanity. What happens to Dionysus during a pandemic? That's what the story is about. I have a couple things coming out from Falstaff Books, hopefully in 2022. The first one will probably be Siren Bridge, which is the Strudel story. That another story entirely. Let us just say it's about a lady who's no better than she should be, and her name is Oleander Jones. And hopefully an urban fantasy will be coming out as well in 2022, and that will be called Blood and Strawberries. My website is jeanmarieward.com.
And Susan?
Right, I've actually got 2 books releasing later this month. I'm actually re-releasing one of my romance titles. It's a Western romance called Homegrown Hearts. And then I have the third in my Shadow Council Archives work with Falstaff Books coming out. Between the Dim and the Dark, the main character is Frankenstein's monster, and he is actually getting to meet the woman that created him, oddly enough, in this one. So those will both be out either right before or right after Christmas. And I can be found at shroddey.com, siobhankincaid.com, and most of the time lurking on Facebook somewhere.
Very nice. I'm pretty easy to find at gailzmartin.com, morganbryce.com. The newest books are Trash and Treasure, which is the one with the donut chef possum shifter. And that's in my Fox Hollow series. Ring in the New at Caneham Castle just came out December 1st. And that, of course, is a collection of New Year's Eve stories. And then right after the first of the year, Shutdown Crew, which is co-authored with my husband, Larry and Martin, is the fourth Wasteland Marshals book, and that is near future post-apocalyptic. So I'm pretty easy to find on Facebook and Twitter. All the social media is a variation of those names, but mostly you can find me here on ConTinual. So thanks to all of you for your wonderful food stories and your wonderful books and for spending some of your time with us tonight. Thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There'll be more holidays and romance and writing and food here on ConTinual. So we'll see you online.